Hello and welcome to the Celtic Huddle podcast. I'm Mark Wilson and today I'm joined by the Celtic legend Scott Mcdonald. Scott won a league title and a League Cup during his 3 seasons at Parkhead. He also scored the winning goal against AC Milan back in 2007. Not a bad thing to have in your CV, as well as numerous goals against Rangers. Another Hoops legend, Murdo MacLeod, is also back in the studio alongside me. Murdo, where have you been? I've seen you for ages. Looks like you've been on holiday with that tan, by the way.
I've been hiding.
Well, good to see you, Murdo. We'll also have Derek McGregor from the Scottish Sun. He's been close to all the major stories at Parkhead this season. So, on today's podcast, we'll discuss Sunday's game away to Rangers, the possibility of Celtic and Rangers joining a British league, and whether or not we'll lose Ryan Christie for nothing. Yep, that's right, nothing. After it was revealed in the Mail on Sunday, he is out of contract in January. We'll also have an exclusive transfer story on a potential new striker. So, stay with us for the next 45 minutes. Get your comments and questions into us. We want to read out as many as we can. We want to hear from you, the Celtic fans. Also available on Twitter at Huddle Celtic and on Instagram at the Celtic Huddle Podcast. Also on YouTube if you subscribe. And I'm delighted to say, once again, the podcast is now sponsored by First Star Legends Gin, First Class Transfers and Social Recluse. We thank them all for their support. So let's get to it, guys. No time to waste. To bring in our first guest all the way from Australia, Scotty Mcdonald. How you doing, mate?
Good day, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Good day, mate. What a way to start.
We're all mates now.
You're looking well, mate. By the way, looking just as bronze as Murdo here.
Yeah, I know.
Very different climates, but the same tan.
Back with the sun visor.
Listen, thanks very much, mate, for coming back on. We've not spoke to you for a while, but let's get your opinion first and foremost on the game on Sunday. Now, people have been saying these last few games are a bit of a dead rubber, but I'm sure nobody needs to tell you that games against Rangers are never dead rubbers. We were there a few weeks ago in the Scottish Cup and lost 2-0. Scotty, so what lessons should be learned from that game to take into this game on Sunday?
Look, I think in intensity, it was a little bit insipid, wasn't it? The performance. Look, was decent spells within the game, especially second half. I think they had chances to really put Rangers under pressure. Obviously, Edouard had 2 glorious ones. If they put one away early, then it really puts pressure on Rangers and it makes it an interesting game. Albeit, they just never took their chances. And that's sort of been, I mean, we talked a lot about the defence here, but it's been stuttering up front as well, hasn't it? You know, a long way. Elyounoussi probably been the pick of the bunch, you would have to say, even though he's not in the starting 11 throughout the whole campaign itself, especially under Neil Lennon. He was in and out a lot. I think there's a lot of people that would like to see him stay next season. But look, it's a free for Celtic. Yeah, people say there's not much to play for, but there is, because the Rangers are unbeaten still this season, and there's no way Celtic players, Celtic staff or Celtic fans want Rangers to finish unbeaten this season. So it's a big game for Celtic, come the weekend.
Yeah, Murdo, what do you think? I mean, played Rangers, not too long ago. I'm sure John would have analysed that game, sat back after it and picked some of the good points. What do you think about lessons that have to be learned, particularly the first half? Yeah. Performances like that can't happen again, can they?
It's just all about work rate for the game, because you've got a target. When you've got a target in an Old Firm game, you're looking at the situation just now. Rangers are looking to go through the whole league season without losing. If you're a Celtic player, you want to beat them. You want to take that away from them. And that's the last thing Celtic's got to look at just now. The last couple of games, forget about them. This game is so important for that one reason. And every player should be pulling up their sleeves, because Scotty was talking about it, the amount of chances we've missed in the last 3 Old Firm games. Played well, and all this nonsense about, we were a better side than Rangers. Lost the game.
Yeah, it doesn't matter,
means
does it?
Absolutely nothing. It means nothing. A good performances mean nothing if you lose a game.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's turned into a wee bit of a habit just now, losing games or not winning games against Rangers, and you don't really want to fall into that habit. Like Scotty, about the shape, right, I've never, I don't think, followed a Celtic side in a season that the shape has been questioned so much from the start of the season. What formation? Usually, one or two formations, and that takes you through the season. But this team changes that often, and it changed back to the diamond at Ibrox a couple of weeks ago. And it was a 4-2-3-1 against Livingston the week before. What do you think will happen this Sunday? Do you think John saw enough in that diamond to cause Rangers problems on Sunday? For instance, do you think Lee Griffiths should partner Odsonne Edouard up front? Or you mentioned El Yunusi, who's done a decent job at it so far. What do you think he'll go for?
Look, I think the best performances that Celtic have been when they went back to their normal 4-3-3. You can 4-2-3-1 if you want, Mark. Everyone has different names for different shapes now, but that's when Celtic's been at their best. Hopefully, James Forrest can be fit as well, because I think that system as well, he is so vital, and that's what they've really missed in that system this year. And I think because Neil did so well at the back end of last season in a 3-5-2, they began the season like that. They were trying to influence and go with that, and it just didn't work. It was flowing like it was the previous season for a lot of the games, and albeit and you lose the first Old Firm game, and then the pressure's on and you start dropping points. I think the 4-3-3 is the most encouraging, especially playing against Rangers when they have done that. They've been the best two performances for me. So if it was me, that would be what I would be suggesting for the weekend.
Yeah, well, Stevie Dock here says mix up starting 11 go, 3 at the back, midfield 5 and 2 up, Griff and Eddie. Murdo, what do you think? Do you think Griffiths has done enough to merit a start? Now, he comes on for the latter stages of the Aberdeen game, he gets a goal. We chatted about it last week. Should Edouard play again this season, or is that him done at Celtic? And he missed a couple of chances. Griffiths comes on and scores. Has Griffiths done enough to merit a starting place at Ibrox come Sunday?
I don't think so.
No?
I think biggest game of the season coming up now. So I think Griffiths, from what you hear from the background about he's not been doing enough at training, he's not been that. He's been coming on in games and scoring goals. That's fine. So he can be on the bench at Ibrox and then come on. But starting a game, if he's not scoring the first half or in 10 minutes into the second half, then he's getting the hook, he's off, and that's it. I still think if you're looking for Griffiths to give you something, it's when he comes on the pitch as a sub. And I think Edwards again, he's a player who he likes playing in the big games, but he made a mess of it the last Old Firm game. But I still think he's got to, round about him. My team for the weekend would be Bain in goal, Kenny, Welsh, Ayer and Taylor, Brown and McGregor sitting in there. You've got Christie to the right, you've got Turnbull off the main striker, Elyounoussi on the left-hand side and Edouard through the middle. And I think, just Scotty was saying Elyounoussi, I think he's a dangerous player to play against, and he's one who can score goals in any occasion. Yeah, I think he's he's worth a start. So 4-2-3-1 for you. Robert Baker said that diamond formation doesn't work against Rangers. They just counted it the last time. And I suppose, Scott, you can look at it and say it looks decent at times in possession, and it looked like it gave Rangers some problems. But listen, results tell the story, like Murdo said. That if you keep getting into these games and playing a diamond, but ultimately keep losing the game, then surely something's got to change.
Well, yeah, I'd agree with that, because I looked at the firm game, the first Celtic Rangers game at the beginning of the season. Celtic played a back three, and it was so frustrating to watch. There was no width within the game for Celtic. Celtic strengths being out in those wide areas. Now, if you're giving Rangers all that area to go and explore as well, because we know that that's their strengths as well with Barisic and Tavernier. So you need to fight the fight similar. And I think Celtic, with the players that they have, and especially in those attacking areas, can hurt Rangers if you get them there. And interesting, look, we've got Christie and you've got Turnbull. If Forrest is fit, I'm not sure, obviously, what the story is over there. I would play James Forrest in this game, because for me, it's like Murdo said, it's the biggest game of the season, and with him running at players, I would actually probably take Christie out if you're going to play Turnbull, because Turnbull got goals in him. Christie's form's been up and down. Again, it gives you a plan B. You talked about Lee Griffiths there, Murdo, as well. You're bang on, because if you play Edouard and Griffiths together, where's your plan B there? Because there's no faith in Ayeti at the moment. And if you're playing all these players in the starting 11, it's not going right, then who is going to come and change the game? So you do need impact players as well.
Yeah, listen, if James Forrest is half fit Murdo, I would play him. Because why not? What are you going to lose, from playing him? He didn't play the game at Celtic Park because he was deemed to be not up to speed enough. Then, of course, he missed this. But Scotty's right. Celtic have been lacking width in these games. And it's so obvious. The last game at Ibrox, I don't know what you thought, Scotty, but seeing the both fullbacks, we touched on them last week. When you play a diamond, you need fullbacks to be your width. And it looked like the two of them were gave instructions not to cross the halfway line.
Don't go too far.
Don't go to. That's what it looked like.
It was exactly the same in the first game of the season at Celtic Park when had wing backs. It was exactly the same. They got overawed by Rangers' width, and they got destroyed. And Celtic just tried to keep going through the middle, and Rangers were very, very comfortable in doing so. They were happy for Celtic to try and penetrate through those middle areas. It's when you go wide again, that's when the difficulty comes for them, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, I think Scotty's right. It would be a massive lift if Forrest is available for this game. He's got great pace, and against Barisic, I think he would be under a wee bit of pressure, and he would be one player that would need to play defensively throughout the 90 minutes, because Forrest will run up and down the park, he'll defend well, but he'll take him the full distance all the way back into his own defence.
Yeah, it's been far too easy, that's for sure, for the Rangers full-backs in these games. You could probably go back 4 or 5 games in that as well. Listen, just on Rangers then, Scotty, do you think they'll be a wee bit more fragile than they have been after losing to St Johnstone? Do you think that will have any effect on them?
Possibly, but if you're Steven Gerrard, you're not going to allow that, are you? I'd be absolutely livid after going out in the Cup, especially in the manner that they did. And he even said it himself on the weekend, didn't he? 1 trophy out of 9 for his reign there is just not good enough. But they'll be desperate to finish the season on a high, and that means finishing the season unbeaten. So there's no more motivation needed for those players or for Steven Gerrard. But sometimes you wonder, is it more from a fan's perspective and a manager's perspective for himself that the unbeaten run matters than to the players, because they've done what they set out to achieve already, and that was just Celtic winning 10 in a row, albeit though the games at Ibrox, extra motivation for them. So look, I think they'll be more than up for the game, and if they were to win that one, then they would think more or less that they're over the line in terms of being unbeaten for the rest of the season.
Yeah. So on Sunday, Murdo, will be Scott Brown's last ever game for Celtic against Rangers. Now, you gave us your opinion. You think he should start the game. Scotty, what's your opinion? Brownie start the game on Sunday?
Absolutely. Again, we're in the position now that it's not a league sider. It's not on form. Basically, Scotty's a natural leader anyway. I don't think at the moment anyone would begrudge Scott to play in this game. I think it's and it would be a great fitting moment if he was to obviously get that victory, especially at Ox, in his last ever game as well. So I think everyone is 100% behind Scott to play this game. Fans, supporters, club, to stick on.
He'll be emotionally charged, will he not, Murdo? I mean, you think the amount of games, it'll be interesting actually. Maybe I should have done my research on this before, but how many of these games he's actually played in? Can't be many. It's played more than that, but for this to be his last one, imagine the feeling of him going out there and what's on the line if he can take away a win in his last ever game.
I think the best thing you can say about Scott Brown, or one of the best things, is the amount of Rangers fans who would always say in Old Firm games, when Scott Brown plays in these games, he pushes the whole team forward, makes Celtic a better side all the time. He fights for everything, he goes into challenges, he winds people up, he does everything to win games. And Rangers supporters will say that's what they've been missing for the last 9 years.
Yeah.
And now it's all changed. Scott Brown's been absolutely fantastic. And it's not just Rangers games, it's every game Scott Brown, and he's been a great captain for Celtic.
Yeah, I mean, he's had so many iconic moments, especially at Ibrox, Scotty. We would have been there with him a couple of times, but from his celebration when he scored, to remember the tackle when Celtic, was it under the Brendan Rodgers era, was that right, where he smashes somebody in the middle of the pitch, and he you can see him turning in saying to his team to waken up, and of course he did. So many great wins, but it'll mean a lot to him, Scotty, this one, to go out with a victory, won't it?
It will. Like Murdo said, he'll be emotionally charged for this, but there's no better team talk for John Kennedy than to Scott on the weekend, and what he means to the club itself, but also what he probably means to those players in there, and doing that job for him, come the weekend, because it's his last one. So I think they'll all be motivated and charged correctly for this one, albeit everyone says it's a dead rubber, but for a lot of reasons it's not. For Rangers, unbeaten run, for Celtic being Scott Brown's last game, so it will still have a really, really good edge to it.
Yeah, well, think about it. I mean, if Celtic fail to win this one, not beating Rangers all season, it's of course vital to win, going a full season. Bit unthinkable. You wouldn't have thought that a few years ago where Rangers were. But I was looking at it last time, it was 21 years ago that happened, Murdo. That was in the John Barnes era. I think, so Celtic lost 4-2 at Ibrox. They lost 4-0 at Ibrox as well. Got beat 1-0 at Celtic Park. So a long time, a lot has happened since that time, and it's unthinkable that, if Celtic don't win on Sunday, it's the first time in 21 years.
Oh, it's horrific, but it's something you don't want if you're a football player. No, it's all right. And possibly a lot of players are kind of just thinking, but it's a big game again, here we go. But they don't really know the history of the whole scenario. No, not to win any of the games.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden,
just think of the amount of people who's never experienced that.
Yeah.
Guys at 2021 who've never known growing up, not beating Rangers.
That's it. Well, you just need to look over the last 9 years of winning the championship,
of dominance,
dominating all the time, and a lot of people are used to that. Young kids getting used to just Celtic are winning all the time, home and away, both games, going to Ibrox and scoring a lot of goals, all these kind of things. But this season has been so different from what we expected, what was going to happen from the start to now. Yeah.
Well, look, we put a poll up earlier when we were chatting about the team. We put it up yesterday. Should Griffiths start for Celtic this weekend? 64% of you said yes, 36% said no. So I think
that's a lot. 36% is a lot.
A lot of Celtic fans, even though Griffiths has been missing a lot and he's let himself down with his fitness, a lot of Celtic fans still think he's our best bet for goals. And when you see the amount of chances that have been missed, particularly at Ibrox last week, at Pittodrie last week as well, they're thinking Griffiths is their best bet. So
I can understand that. I've watched him all season as well, but I just feel going into a game like this, bring him on if he's going to get a chance, but don't start him, because if he doesn't score in the first hour, he's going to get hooked. And then there's who's going to come on, and because when he's come on in some of the games, the game at Perth and all that kind of thing, he came on late in the game and scores a goal and all that kind of thing. He scores goals for you all the time, but that's coming on.
Yeah, maybe he could do it if he started. You don't know.
Well, look at most of the games he started. He gets hooked. He's not been scoring goals.
Well, time will tell. But by the way, Scotty, just before we move on to our next point, I was just seeing it popped up on my Twitter earlier. Was it 13 years ago to the day you scored a couple against Rangers? Listen, how many did you score against Rangers, actually?
4, I think it was.
3 or 4? 4? What was your best one? What was your favourite one?
The one at Ibrox, obviously, innit? You played a big punt down the line, and Sammy.
Listen, thanks for giving it. No, honestly, I would love to take credit, but it was Gary Caldwell actually.
There you go.
But to be honest, Scotty, I was going pear-shaped Murdo. I was on the bench, but they brought me on at half-time, and the game turned, and we won 1-0. But I thought you would have said that one. Scotty. But I couldn't believe when I seen the other two of the day, and I forgot how many you actually scored against Rangers. So good times. Look, moving on. So joining a British league, and delighted to say we're joined again by Derek McGregor from the Scottish Sun. Derek, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. Hello, Murdo, Scott.
Hi, Derek.
Yeah, Derek, this story broke in your paper last week, the British League, British Super League, whatever you want to call it. What's the background to the whole thing?
Well, it was my well-connected London-based colleague Martin Lipton who broke the story last week, Mark. And, you know, clearly the top six in England have been left badly bruised by the shambolic rapid collapse of this proposed European Super League. But, you know, has that put an end to their desire for change? No. And I think, as my colleague Martin reported, they're now very much pushing for a revamp of the actual English Premier League. And long before the dramatic emergence of this Super League proposal, European Super League proposal, I think as far back as last October, Liverpool and Manchester United were the prime instigators of kind of applying pressure to the Premier League hierarchy for, I think, the format of the Premier League. I think for the membership of the Premier League to be, I think the menu of it to be spiced up as such, made a bit more exciting. I think they feel not only should it be slimmed down, it should also, you know, as I say, just be jazzed up a wee bit. And with that in mind, they particularly would like the old firm to become involved. Now, I mean, let's face it, I think a British league's been talked about for 20, 30 years, possibly further back. And I think a lot of us have grown kind of sceptical. We hear it constantly. We doubt if it will ever happen. But I think on the back of this collapse of the European Super League, I think the so-called Big Six in England now are even more motivated now to push for change on the domestic front. Now, the English Premier League Chief Executive, Richard Masters, agreed back in October to look or to carry out a review of their top flight. Now, that process is still ongoing, and Richard Masters brought in an outside agency to have a look at it. Now, I think we're expecting the results of that in June, and there could well be the possibility that there's a recommendation to include the old firm. But of course, it's easier said than done. You know, you've got clubs currently in the Premier League who, understandably, are going to be seriously resistant to the old firm suddenly getting parachuted in. So it's a fascinating situation. And as I said, I think the Big Six are bruised and they're not prepared to go quiet. They want change of some kind.
So I know you briefly mentioned what is what needs to happen overall for this to actually get the green light and go ahead, and how long do you expect that to take place? For instance, will it be in the next 5 years? I mean, it won't be next year or the year after. Will it take as long as 5 years if it gets a green light?
Well, I think it's emerged over recent days that I think for the old firm to quit Scottish football, they effectively have to put in a notice period of 2 full seasons. So, of course, that in itself would be well within a 5-year time frame that you're talking about, Mark. But of course, it's never, I don't think these things are ever as straightforward as that. You know, there's contractual obligations, there's TV deals. I think certainly the likes of Sky, you know, will have a huge influence if anything was to happen. And I think these kind of discussions are always ongoing on the quiet behind the scenes. I don't think they ever totally go away, but I think that there would appear to be certainly an ever-growing motivation of the top six down south to try and force some kind of change. And of course, all revolves around money, Mark.
Yeah,
Derek.
Scotty, what's your opinion on it? I mean, do you think it will happen? And if you were a player at Celtic, would you have liked to have been part of a British league where you're going on every second week and playing at Old Trafford and the Emirates and things like that?
Look, there's no question as a player. Yes, absolutely. Probably as a supporter of one of the two. Absolutely. Is it any different to what we've just argued? for the last couple of weeks in terms of, fans, and it's not right in the game, how it's trying to take away from history of it, the Scottish game. Another question I have as well, actually, which would be quite interesting, calling it a British league, but when Scotland got independence, how would that then unfold in terms of breaking down and having, I know it's a different, but breaking Celtic and Rangers away from Scotland and bringing them in, it's more or less a foreign country then. So how is it any dissimilar to what the Big Six were trying to do with other countries? So there's these complications that would come into it as well. I think it's very, very difficult from a legal standing point. They will, mind you, in saying that the Super Six were able to do it. The European Super League was definitely going to go ahead. There would have been action against it, but by all accounts, that legally they could have done it if they wanted to. So that's the interesting point as well. I know Derek's going to fit in there.
Sorry, Scott, I didn't mean to cut across you there.
No.
I think the top six. I think the top six in England feel encouraged by the fact that I think lately, or certainly over the last 6 months or so, both FIFA and UEFA have indicated that they could well, for the first time, be satisfied with countries merging. There's long been talk of Belgium and Holland. I think there's also been talk of Mexico and MLS. And I think FIFA and UEFA, for the first time, are now giving a big hint that they could be flexible with this. And I think that's encouraging the big clubs down south to think this for the first time could be feasible. But you make a good point, Scott. There's so many complications in this, I think.
I'm not for it. I must admit. Now, I'm slightly hypocritical because if I was a player, like Scotty just said there, I would love the prospect of going down south. But now I'm out here. I agree here with Peter Rooney. I think he makes a good point here. Would like Celtic to be leading the way and enhancing the product here, getting more fans to games, better match day experiences, fan zone standing sections, etc. Improve our game rather than leave, and I would like to see that happen. I think there's so much improvements could be done to Scottish football with the big two here, and trying to bring the lesser teams, if you like, Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, up to a standard that they could possibly compete better on the European stage and enhance our game here. I mean, Murdo, listen, you've been in the game for 40 years. Do you think this could happen? Do you think there's big changes coming in the next few years in football?
I think it can, because you look at football now, VAR, who would ever have thought that somebody's going to sit in a studio miles away from a stadium and dictating if it's a penalty or not? Who would ever have thought that? So things in football now has changed. Scott touched on there. Foreign players going different places all around the world just to follow where the big clubs are playing in these leagues. And so I think it will happen at some point. And I know the fans were very angry, but at some point the clubs and the owners, they're wanting more and more money going into their bank accounts. So I think in maybe what you're saying, 6 or 7 years.
But the thing is, see, if Rangers and Celtic join the British Super League, there's a danger they'll end up falling into the situation that, your Man United, your Arsenal, whoever else, Chelsea are slightly different because Abramovich has been there for 18 years. But these American investors just come in, take over your club, and it seems rosy at the time, and all of a sudden you lose the club's identity. And
the one thing about all the super top teams in the world, anywhere getting together, if they have a league, one of them must finish bottom. And if you're a supporter of that club, you're thinking, all my life I've been supporting this team and they've been up at the top end of the table all my life, and now all of a sudden we've seen them at the bottom. So I think that's quite a difficult thing for a lot of the fans. But they're saying now no relegation for anyone moves in and out the leagues.
Yeah, Stevie Dock here. Doesn't matter what you do for match day experiences. Fans are not excited walking to Parkhead to watch Aki's Livy Killy 4 times a season anymore. Need to move forward in the world. Sorry, Derek, can you come? What were you saying there?
No, I was just going to say, a couple of minutes ago, Mark, you used the word, I think that's quite often very relevant for football. You said hypocrisy. And I think, just the other week, you've got both the old firm joining so many other clubs and associations in condemning the plans for this European Super League, making it clear that it went against the ethos of football and tradition. And yet, if both Celtic Rangers had a scenario where they were invited to join a British league, so to speak, would they find that too much to resist? And indeed, would that be hypocritical if they then chose to leave Scottish football to go for a so-called glitzier, more financially beneficial league? Would that make them?
Of course it would. Of course it would. There's no way you can get away from that, you know. And we're all up in arms about it last week, but it'd be exactly the same. There's Celtic and Rangers. Only instead of your Leicesters and whoever else getting hurt, it's Aberdeen and Hibs and Hearts. So. Well, I don't think it will. I don't think it's right. But let's move things on a bit into our usual discussion point that we've had for the last 9 weeks. Back to the manager situation. Oh, and by the way, stay tuned. Transfer story coming up at the end that will let you know. That could be quite interesting for next season. Scott, just to get your opinion on what's happened. We've not spoke to you for a wee while, like I said at the start of the show, but the managerial situation, 9 weeks, I think. Is it 9 weeks today, 9 weeks tomorrow since Neil Lennon walked away from Celtic? Nothing really been done. What do you make of the situation so far?
I just don't know. You see me rubbing my head just there. I'm just going, what am I going to say about this that hasn't already been said?
Yeah.
You know, and obviously there doesn't seem to be a prime candidate, or the prime candidate doesn't want to take the role. You know, like if Eddie Howe is that number one target and Celtic, yes, that's our prime target, and why is he not agreed to take the job? And why is there no football director, like everyone's talking, that there's going to be at Celtic Park already? To now the recruitment begins. Now the new season begins. It began 8-9 weeks ago, and still no closer to knowing from the outside, anyhow, on who that's going to be. But it's hard to narrow down who you're saying. I reckon you're going to ask me next. Well, who do you think will be the next manager? Who do you want? It's so difficult to say.
Well, what's Eddie Howe doing just now? He's doing the same as the super clubs. He's looking for the best one. He's playing the field. He's looking down south to see some of the teams now in England. They're going to change their manager at the end of the season, and he's thinking, I've got a chance of this.
It's not. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think then the blame no lies with Eddie Howe in that one. I think it lies with Celtic in terms of saying, well, either convince him or say, listen, this is the cut-off date. Listen, we need an answer by then, or else we need to move on because there's too much work to be done. But I mean, Derek, I heard yesterday that Eddie Howe at Bournemouth had something along the lines of 17 staff working under him in his backroom team. Is that a stumbling block? Is that going to continue to be a stumbling block coming to Celtic, that he won't get that amount to work with?
I'd be amazed if there's 17 staff going to be in the dugout or involved at Celtic. I mean, I think if you remember going back to the Lou Macari days, there was often the joke there was going to be a top tier in the dugout because he had so many backroom staff. I don't think that would be the case with Celtic, but clearly I think most modern day big clubs have sizable staff. I mean, even I think the likes of Aberdeen, I think Derek McInnes had assembled a fairly well-sized staff, but that also included medical, sports science, etc. Yeah. I think just because there's silence at the moment doesn't mean it's there's nothing happening. I think it's the well-worn phrase "talks ongoing," and I think that's the case at the moment. As things stand, I'd stick my neck out and say I still think Eddie Howe will become Celtic manager. Well, Ian Mackay here, Derek says, agrees with you. The lack of activity surely suggests that a deal's been done. So you're along those lines. Well, yeah. I mean, I think as we know, Celtic have said and are saying precious little on anything at the moment, especially to do with the proposed new managerial structure. But I think also the vibe we kind of pick up is that I think the Celtic hierarchy hierarchy are quite comfortable at the moment. And I think that's based on the fact that I think they're confident that eventually they will be able to confirm Eddie Howe. Now, of course, it's a risky strategy because, look, until it's signed, it's not done. And they still run the risk of someone else coming in with a better offer. But I think Eddie Howe essentially wants the job, and I think probably what's going on at the moment is he's probably wanting things in place. And I think quietly, discreetly, all manner of people are being spoken to at the moment. And I think it's a case of trying to, in his mind, be sure of who is going to be coming with him. And I think at that point, you'll probably find that it will be announced.
Yeah, but one thing, Derek, he's going to have to deal with, if it's Eddie Howe or a new manager, is the players who remain at the club. One of those players, Ryan Christie, who will be there, but by all accounts, he won't be there that long. Derek, what's the situation with Ryan Christie's contract? Quite a strange one.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were all quite stunned when it emerged over the weekend that in actual fact his contract runs out in January. And, I'm amazed that, Celtic certainly would allow a top player. I mean, indeed, most players to have a contract that would expire halfway through a season. Why that was allowed to happen, I don't know. I don't know if it was a condition of Ryan signing his last contract extension. But regardless, it is what it is. And I think come the start of July, he will be able to speak to clubs and, if he so wishes, sign a pre-contract. I don't think he would leave Celtic for nothing. I think what would probably happen, as generally can be the case, is a player will sign a pre-contract and very soon after that, the clubs will agree a compromise figure. Now, clearly, that scenario means Celtic, considering what they generally like to receive for a player of Ryan Christie's standing, they're going to get nowhere near what they like. So they would have to accept a compromise fee, or else he does go for nothing. But it's an extraordinary situation, Mark.
Yeah, Scotty, you've got to say, as much as Celtic have been applauded for the business they've done over a decade in terms of signing players and then selling them on, this one looks a bit of a disaster on the face of it. I mean, how much a blow would it be, first of all, to lose Ryan Christie, because he is a quality player, but to lose him for nothing? We were chatting when we started this podcast that he was linked with a move away to France for 10 million quid, and now he could potentially leave for nothing in January.
His agent's a genius. That's what I say. like, if you're allowed to have a contract run out mid-season, that's fantastic, isn't it? A player or an agent, because there's a deal to be done, whether it be with a club or with another club. So how that's been agreed, that's very, very odd, and doesn't, like Derek said, it doesn't happen very often in football at all. But look, I don't know about Ryan at the moment, or his form's not been as good this season, but you could say that about the whole Celtic side. So, is it a blip? It's a big Euros for him. We all know that. I think he's performed very well for Scotland as well. And I think there'll be a few players within that Scotland team, not just from Celtic players, but looking for big moves off the back of playing in the Euros. And I think Christie will certainly be one of them. Putting himself in the shop window. But yeah, it's a disaster for Celtic, that, because like you said, the money that they were portraying that they could get for him of, near enough £10 million to be getting, let's be real, it would be more like $1 million than 10 million. With 6 months to go, they're lucky. So that's a huge disappointment, and it's not been worth the gamble for them because they've not won anything.
Yeah, I think Christie has suffered because of the lack of width. I think he can play that position, no problem, but he needs people to go on the outside of him, fullbacks, for instance, to help him create space. And I think
he's not a winger.
He's not a winger.
He likes coming into the middle of the park, and give him a chance from 20, 25 yards, and he'll take it and he'll curl it into the top corner. But he does need people to go outside
to make runs, to make space for him. I mean, Murdo, there'll be a number of clubs surely interested, sitting up and taking notice of him just now, if they can get him for nothing.
No, but we're talking about going January, but come the summer, there'll be a lot of clubs, and English clubs, and maybe just now we're thinking, oh, you might only get 2 or 3 million for him just now because of the situation. But English clubs will come out, they've got so much money, that's possibly part of their team for next year. They wanted Christie, they'll go and maybe pay him, 8 million or something for him. So you might get good money from some of the English clubs to get him in before January.
Yeah. Scotty, what do you think? Any chance of a new manager coming in and persuading him to sign a new contract in the summer?
I really don't see it, Mark. I think it's a fresh start for a lot of players, and I think for what they've won at the football club, and I think the determination or the motivation for a lot of these players was to win 10 in a row, become icons, go down in history, which they already have with a quadruple treble. Let's not get wrong about that. But I think now you're starting at square one again, and where's the motivation for the players? They've been there and they've done it all at Celtic. Let's be real, they have. They've played in big European nights. They've won every trophy to be possibly had. So now's the time for a lot of these players to be looking and going, I want to play in a better league. I want to play against the best players in the world. And I certainly think Christie is probably thinking that, along with a few others in that changing room. Yeah,
well, it's a good point, Scotty. I mean, it has been rumbling on all season that Ryan Christie may want to move on. And let's face it, he's got the perfect opportunity. Listen, before we go, wee bit of transfer news that we said at the top of the show would bring you. So it's understood that Sunderland striker Charlie Wyke is on a list of potential summer signings. Now, looking into him, he scored 30 goals this season in League One. He's 28 years old. He's available in a free transfer. First of all, Scotty, you're goal scorer. I mean, it's an important position that Celtic sort out this season. Would he be somebody looking at his credentials, what he's done this season, that would be the right option for Celtic at this moment in the summer?
It's funny. Charlie started at Middlesbrough, and he was.
Oh, do you know him personally? Do you?
Yeah, well, he was a young boy coming through at Middlesbrough when I first signed under Gordon. He actually went on loan a couple of times on a couple of occasions. He's managed to get, I think he was at Carlisle and a few other football clubs, and I think obviously Sunderland. I think he was at Bradford, scored a good amount of goals, then got his move to Sunderland. So he's got a pedigree in the lower leagues. Now, whether or not that can cross over at Celtic, I'm not quite sure. He would be number one pick, but certainly he's very robust. He'd give you all. You look at Lyndon Dykes type that people were, linking Dykes with Celtic. I think he would give you a bit of that. Early, he scored a lot of headers. Aiden's actually gave him a lot of assists this year, Aiden McGeady. And he thrived off that, and he's obviously one of the best players in League One. He's up for nomination. So, he's at that age though for Celtic. I know he's a free, but at 28, there's no sell-on value. So, is he the real deal? Because if they're bringing him in, then he has to hit the ground running. It has to be goals in him. That's where the value comes from. Is the sell-on value to him. So, I'm not sure if that's really a Celtic signing, especially if Eddie Howe does get the job. And they're talking about wanting to produce young players for more money. Is that the type of signing, for one, Celtic want, and two, they're going to excite the fans?
Yeah, Derek, what do you think about the point Scotty makes there? I mean, if he's going to come in at 28 and score a barrel load of goals, does Celtic abandon this sell-on clause, or do you think that's always going to remain, even though it's not Peter Lawwell there, it's Don Mackay? Is that system still what's going to drive Celtic, or did they get rid of that?
I think, Mark, that's quite honestly, I think that's one of the big reasons behind Celtic's demise as such over the last year. I think too many times they've gone for a project instead of an actual proven, established player. And, I think, Celtic have lost their way badly in recruitment. And I think Charlie Wyke clearly has done very well. I think we can all be guilty of football snobbery. We kind of look at League One and we think he can't be good enough for Celtic. Sometimes also you maybe look at the calibre of other clubs that are interested in him. Why aren't other bigger clubs coming in for him? But,
well, apparently there is interest from clubs down south, Forest being one of them. There's a number of others, but when you go, Derek, sorry to interrupt.
Sunderland in itself is a big club anyway, Mark. There's a huge expectancy still at Sunderland. And credit to him, he's scoring goals. Celtic just have to be shrewder with their recruitment. And, they have to have the right people with the right eye for a player. And look, just because you spend 6 million, as we're seeing, Celtic have spent 5 million in Albion Ajeti, with on the face of it a far better pedigree. Dreadful return. So who's to say that Charlie White couldn't come up here and do it?
Yeah. Yeah, but listen, I played with one. Gary Hooper came from a lower level in England and came up and blew me away how he took to the league. And, you know, you just never know with these signings, Murdo. But quickly, a guy has stature. Celtic haven't really had that kind of big target man for a long time who's been successful. Do you think that's...
Even that age.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Normally Celtic are looking for the younger ones that's going to come good, and then they can sell them on. But at that age, but you never know. No, you look at you go and buy a player at £5 million, and he's been a waste of time this season. But when you look at him scoring goals, but again you're looking at the level he's scoring goals at, and I know Sunderland are a big club.
Yeah.
But Celtic's massive.
Yeah, of course. Guys, thank you for joining us. Just quickly, Scotty, predictions for Sunday. What do we think? Come on, be honest, mate. Be honest. Come on.
Well, I said Celtic 2-1 the last game, and it didn't quite work out that way. But I suppose, look, I'm not sure. I don't want to be doom and gloom, but I'm going to say 1-1, Mark. Sorry.
That sounds like you were building up to a doom and gloom there, mate. Derek, what do you think Sunday?
I'm not convinced, Mark, this current Celtic team has a killer touch against Rangers. Chance after chance, don't take them. I think there is a mentality issue. I'll go with Scott. I think a draw at best for Celtic on Sunday.
Yeah, Murdo?
Well, I'm going for a draw with more goals, though. I just think there will be goals, and I'm going for 2-2.
Ah, very good. Okay, so a draws all round, and I don't need to give you my opinion there just now, since I'm presenting. You're on here for that. Scotty, thanks very much for taking time out to speak to us again. Wish you all the best, mate. Good Pleasure, to see you.
Thanks for having
Cheers,
me.
mate.
Scott, good seeing you.
Derek, thanks again, mate, for your input, and maybe speak to you in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks, Derek.
Cheers, Derek.
So I will agree with you. I do think it'll be a draw as well. I agree with Derek there. I just think there is a bit of a mentality issue in these last few games against Rangers. Yeah. Celtic just, I think, need to get out the Ibrox with a draw, nothing worse, and then build for next season. So be interesting, time will tell. So thank you very much to everybody for tuning in, listening to us or watching us on YouTube. And thanks once again to our sponsors, First Star Legends Gin, Social Recluse and First Class Transfers. We'll see you all again next week.